Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is the June 27th edition, and we have a huge Saturday of racing heading our way at Churchill Downs, part of the Stephen Foster card that features 12 races, 7 stakes races worth over $4 million, including the Stephen Foster's $2 million grade 1 that will go as race 11. We'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. Jonathon Kinchen joining me. Feels like old times, my friend.
Sure does. We're back. I miss you, boss man. Everything good down there in Houston, Texas? Did you make it to a World Cup game?
I did not, unfortunately. Wanted to hit one of these later ones, but those prices got a lot higher after Saudi Arabia and Cape Verde played well early on. But we had some popular teams play, so that was the Netherlands and Portugal. Those prices got up there, but definitely watching with keen interest and looking forward to the knockout rounds as well. Was unfortunately watching last night, but that game didn't really matter, so we're not gonna spend too much time dwelling on that. But the World Cup scene rolls on for sure. Did want to mention before we get started, this show is brought to you by the KTDF. The Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund has helped to create a year-round racing scene in Kentucky by increasing purses statewide throughout the Commonwealth. The best way to fully take advantage of those increased purses is racing and breeding in Kentucky. You can learn more at KentuckyBred.org. Today's show is also brought to you by the Stephen Foster Betting Challenge. Sign up to play today at twinspires.com. In addition, there is a $100 bankroll only Belmont at the Big A contest on Sunday as we send off Aqueduct, something that Jonathon will be doing in person. A little bit bittersweet, well, a lot of it bittersweet, actually, that we'll be saying farewell to Aqueduct. But of course, Belmont, the new Belmont, is on the horizon, and that's very exciting after 46 days in a place that's pretty fun too.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun summer with no letdown, right? Leading right into that Friday. I would imagine some of the horses that run well in the Stephen Foster will also line up to take on, hopefully more than one of them, to line up to take on Forever Young in that opening day at Belmont. So it could be a lot of fun this whole summer.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to for sure. And again, a big thanks to KTDF and TwinSpire. So let's get into this Pick 6 sequence, Jonathon. Worth mentioning, we're going to go over the Derby City Pick 6 sequence for Saturday. It is a mandatory payout on Sunday as the pool continues to grow. So we will look forward to that as well. This sequence begins in race 7 on Saturday afternoon at 4:04 Eastern time. And we've been notified that Bob Baffert will scratch the 1 Splendora and run her in the Molly Pitcher on the Haskell Invitational undercard, which obviously is going to make things a lot easier. I like Shred the Gnar from the beginning. I think she's more equipped to go this mile and an eighth than Splendora, but now she is going to be a prohibitive favorite.
Yeah, she'll be a tough horse to beat. It's hard for me. It's been obviously a little disappointing to see a horse like Immersive win 3 grade 1s as a 2-year-old and then, feel a little disappointing after that. But maybe an opportunity to go a little bit further. Some of that class jumps into the mix. She'll have a target and Shred the Gnar. I don't love her by any means. And the 8-1 morning line is obviously not what you're going to get with the scratch. You're going to end up getting 3-1. So it's not going to feel nearly as warm and fuzzy as it might have seemed when you look at the paper. But she would be the only alternative for me.
Yeah, she did elevate her game last time out. I guess there's an argument to be made that she's maybe been as good at Churchill as anywhere else. She's just sort of the poster child for what happens when a 2-year-old is more advanced than her peers, and then the pack catches up pretty quickly, right? Because little did we realize there were horses like Shred the Gnar, or last year there was Nitrogen, of course, there was Lucara. There were 3-year-olds that won grade 1 races that didn't really stamp themselves as being that good at 2, whereas Immersive did, and she delivered at every turn. But I think the job gets a lot easier for Shred the Gnar here, who also should have nothing keeping her from establishing a pretty easy lead. She's 3 for 3 at Churchill Downs and was very game in winning that La Troyenne last time out. I'll be interested to see if she takes a little bit of a step forward. And there's no denying Brian Lynch's horses have been on an absolute tear through the entire spring, winter, really going all the way back to the fall. It's now becoming all 4 seasons that his horses have run this well. So expecting Shred the Gnar to perform at a high level once again. That's the Fleur de Lis, grade 2, that goes as leg 1 in this Pick 6 sequence. Let's go to race 8, the American Derby, at 1 mile and a 16th on turf. And I think we're going to have a relatively short price favorite again here in Alpeland, who comes in off a powerful win in the Penn Mile. Should easily be able to handle the additional ground they're going here at 1 mile and a 16th, given that he's gone it before. His last 2 blemishes on turf, it's worth noting, are both at 1 mile and a 16th. But if the Penn Mile had been 1 mile and a 16th, he would have won by 6. Yeah,
it's funny. This sequence, I think, when you look at it, there's some horses that you could see singling. There's some, you have an opportunity to single a horse like, Sovereignty, who was so impressive last year. Or maybe you wanted to go in a direction like White Abarrio. Oddly, I have 2 weird singles. I have a single in the last and a single here that I think are interesting. I'm going to single the 6 Alpi Lane. I think if you look deep in those 3 races, the last 3 races, all 3 of those races are better than anything else in here has run in their lifetime. So I'll single A that one. But then I will use 1,000 Sticks as a single B horse. I think that horse probably is a little bit better, maybe going longer, but I thought the last race was at least good enough to give that one a shot. So I'll single A Alpiland, who I just think stands out against this group, and I'll single B the 4,000 Sticks.
Yeah, no big argument from me. I made immortalize the second choice on the morning line, mainly because he ran second to Alpiland last time out, and he's run well and gotten better progressively for Brendan Walsh, who's a trainer I have a lot of respect for. I think the public's going to bet the 2 prepped a little bit. It figures-wise, he's slow, but this is a Cherie DeVaux horse with Jose Ortiz on board. They see the big win last time out. It looks like a key race as well, with multiple winners coming out of it. It's a big jump in class. But this is a horse that the public has gone pretty heavy for throughout his career, favored in all 5 prior starts, including that Rich Maiden special weight event on the Kentucky Oaks undercard back on May 1st. So I could see maybe a little support for him. I don't think there's enough pace in here to set up his late run, and I think he'll be outmoved by Alpiland. Javier Castellano rides Alpiland a lot like he rode Webslinger a few years ago, in that he likes to make those far turn moves and sort of swoop the field and go on from there. I don't know if he's necessarily going to have to do that here. I just think he's better than these horses. And I agree with you in that I would single him in any multi-race sequence until someone jumps up in this field and runs a better race than he did last time out. I'm not going to believe that any of them are capable of doing so. Let's go to race 9, the Bango, a grade 3 at 6.5 furlongs on dirt. We're going to have a pretty short price favorite here as well in the 2 Cornucopian. He feels like one, though, that you want to entertain almost every alternative, because last time out, he ran his race. He ran fine. His speed figure came back a good number, but that was Roll On, Big Joe, and Gold Sweep. And while this race might not be loaded with Breeders' Cup Sprint horses, there are some Breeders' Cup Sprint horses in here.
Yeah, I just, when you look down, you look at his race last time, the Churchill Downs didn't work out that great. T.O. Elvis kind of, overwhelmed everyone. His San Carlos, his allowance race, basically and even his debut sprint. It feels like all of those races put him right in the mix or ahead of all of these horses' best, right? I mean, even Dr. Venkman's best race, in recent time, in this decade, last year specifically, I just wasn't overwhelmed by that. I guess the only other option would be Built for me. I'm going to do this a couple of times. I'm going to single A Cornucopian and single B Built on the outside. I just think that Cornucopian's gotten really good, and he's kind of found his new home sprinting.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Dr. Venkman to me also seems like he's probably being prepped for the Bing Crosby. And this is a great spot in terms of the calendar, getting a race into him 4 weeks before that. That's the only grade 1 sprint objective out west for him. And Marquelette obviously is based on the West Coast. The concern with Built is whether he can be as effective off Lasix, right? He's just not run as well off Lasix as he has with it. But everything is set up for him. He's drawn well on the outside. He should get a good trip forcing this pace. I wondered a little bit if Extra Anejo could run better second off a layoff. He was beaten handily by Built last time out, but you could see Steve Asmussen probably trying to build him up into a second off the layoff situation. The problem I had was that he ran really well off the layoff last year. And so I didn't really want to use this excuse for him, knowing that he is capable of being fresh off the bench. It's a race where I'm a little confused in terms of how exactly I want to approach it, because I want to be against Cornucopian, but every alternative I try, I'm like, there's some things to like, but there are things I think to go keep you coming back to the favorite, who, if he runs his last race, there's a 0% chance he loses.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that if he, the way he quickened away from him, if he's able to do that, he's going to be tough.
That is race number 9. The Bango also starts the late pick 4. Let's go back to the turf in race 10. The Wise Dan, a grade 2 at a mile and a 16th. This is a fun race with, I think, it's pretty competitive regardless of how you feel about the 2 Laginos, who is going to be a pretty solid favorite. Comes in with 4 straight wins. This is a fun, older horse that just seems to have a nose for the wire.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use him for sure, but he's definitely not one that I want to lean on too hard, and one that, when they start to get in the gate, if I'm alive at this point, I like to think I'd be rooting against, right, with some other opportunities. Well, rooting against, considering that I'll probably have some other ones that are better prices. The one kind of pet horse I have that hasn't run great this year is Mercante. I just have always been a fan. I think that he's a sneaky type that's run some really big races and run well, but it's been a while since he's had his picture taken, all the way since last May. I'll still chase him around here a little bit to see if I can't get him in there at a little bit of a price. The 6 Dresden Row, I think you have to use off of that last performance, although it was an allowance race. The race came back fast. He got himself a good trip. He's tactical enough, but he'll sit off of horses. And then, so I'll use those 3 as A's, and then I'll use the 2 maker horses as B horses, the 1 and the 4. The 4, obviously, we know what we're getting. The 1, I think on paper, has some races that are sneaky good. And if he happens to make that improvement switching to Maker's Barn, he could really get an inside trip, a nice pocket trip with that tactical speed inside. So I wanted to make sure I had him on a ticket at a price. So 2, 3, 6 as A's, 1 and 4 as B's.
Yeah, he's getting a committed front end trip. There's no denying that. Luis Saez is going to send him and see how far he can take him. He's been a little bit more effective at a mile than a mile and a 16th, but he is a stakes winner at a mile and a 16th, having won the Showing Up back in 2024. Not an easy guy to take a horse off of, but Maker's a guy that moves up turf horses off the claim pretty regularly, so not going to be surprised if that happens. I pick Chasing the Crown in here. I think I can at least make a good case for him to maybe come from a little bit off the pace with Flavien Prat getting on board. I thought he ran a winning race in the opening verse last time out and just lost a photo to Laganos. He's been given a little bit of time since then, with Maker perhaps having an eye on this and skipping the race in the interim. But I felt like really any one of the inside 4 could win. And Dresden Row, jumping in class is the only worry, but he's been very good in his last 2 starts, as you mentioned. The win-2 back at Keeneland was against a weak field, but last time out, he ran very well, just looking like a determined winner the entire way. Even in mid-stretch, you felt like he was going to grind it out and run down the likes of Old Crazy Bone and Lambeth. Old Crazy Bone won last year's Kentucky Turf Cup, and Lambeth came back and ran really well in an allowance race in his next start. So there's a lot to say for the work that Dresden Row has done of late. There are horses in this race who's, would have to harken back to days gone by, like Brilliant Birdie. It's not going to shock me if Brilliant Birdie jumps up and runs well in one of these races. He just looks a little off form. Did you think similarly?
100%. Yeah, Brilliant Birdie actually was involved, so he's a little bit of a pet for me. He was involved in the Churchill Downs race that led to me winning the Pick Your Prize last year. So when I see his name come up, I'm always like, oh. He was in that mix. I don't know. I think he ran second. I don't know if he won or maybe he won. And if he even didn't, he was in my exacta. Where did he run that day? That would have been
second to Mercante.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Mercante told you he's a pet of mine.
Your 2 pets are back. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think he just doesn't seem like he's on form right now. He doesn't seem like he's going in the right direction. I thought he ran well enough last time, but he didn't really have an excuse. He was wide. He lost some ground. So maybe he'll run better, but I think he'll beat me tomorrow.
Yeah, two straight defeats to Laganos, and that's a horse that he had beaten multiple times before. We'll see if he can rebound a little bit over his favorite turf course. Race 11 is the centerpiece of the Stephen Foster Day card. It is the Stephen Foster, a grade 1 at a mile and an eighth with a $2 million purse. We're going to have a couple of scratches on the outside of Fort Steele and Navajo Warrior, which leaves us with a field of 5. Looks pretty simple on paper, Jonathan, that Willie Dees is going to go to the lead, and we'll see who wants to stalk him most actively. I think it's pretty safe to assume it would likely be Magnitude, with Sovereignty and White Abarrio sitting just behind them, perhaps White Abarrio a little bit closer. I think what I'm getting to is that it all lines up for Sovereignty to be able to strut his stuff in here and run an improved race off of an Oaklawn handicap that I think people are misunderstanding and sort of charging him with run more poorly than he did. He did not run poorly, in my opinion.
No, I think if you look at the pace figures, that was the fastest early he's ever run. And I know that seems obvious because he's on the lead. But if you're a student of pace figures, I know we both look at them. Just because a horse makes the lead doesn't mean that the pace was fast. It just so happens that this pace was quick. Was I, this much disappointed that he got beat? Yeah, but not because I don't think he ran well. It's because the fan in me wanted him to be this super horse that's come back, and that was what I was a little bit bummed about. Look, I will have him as an A horse. I will root for him to win. I want him to win. I don't quite trust him because of this field that shows up here, and that's what leads me to picking Baeza. If you look back at last year, there was always this excuse about how Baeza was not the most focused, mature horse. It wasn't quite ready yet. And that once he grew up a little bit, he could potentially turn the tables on Sovereignty. And on a number of occasions, he was beat by Sovereignty by a length and by 2 lengths. He got beat by 6 in the Belmont. He's right there. And I just think that maybe this is a time for him to take that step forward. And we have this new rivalry. We thought it was going to be journalism and sovereignty to kind of continue their rivalry, but maybe Baeza jumped to journalism, and now it's Baeza and sovereignty. I think Baeza will be my top choice in here. I'll use the 4 and the 3 as A's, and I'll use the 2 and the 5 as B's. The singles I have in here kind of allow me to be a little bit more spready in here than it seems that others might be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the horse you're supposed to bet in here, especially off the trip from last time out, is Baeza. And this is coming from somebody who's bet Baeza against Sovereignty multiple times already. So you don't have to do much to convince me. And I think the fact, I don't want to read into this too much because Bill Mott is one that's a little bit unpredictable as far as being a high-end trainer. The fact he's running in this race and not a race like the Suburban next week, I know he might not have wanted to go 1.25 miles, but he wants Baeza against top-level competition. And I think he also wants to sort of reward the Searings for giving him this horse and knowing that they felt like he deserved to be in the biggest objectives. He lost his race at the start last time out and still ran very, very well. Now, I understand the counter argument is that was corporate power and horses like that, whereas this is Sovereignty and White Abarrio and Magnitude, who are just a different caliber of racehorse. And there's no denying it. What we're projecting is that Baeza is going to run better now, second off a layoff, more than likely, almost certainly with a better start and a little bit of pace in front of him. And I think he'll get all of those things. I also like Flavien Prat getting back on board. Some of his best races were with Flavien. His best races were with Hector Barrios, but he's a horse that's run well on numerous occasions. And I think he's maybe one of the few opportunities he's the only opportunity in this race to inject value in this sequence. And there aren't a lot of opportunities throughout the entire sequence. So I agree. If I was making I made a public selection on the Twin Spires jury, which you can catch on the Twin Spires X account and throughout social media, I would pick Baeza because he's going to be the best price of the horses that can win. Let's talk a little bit about White Abarrio. I need to see White Abarrio run a big race in a place other than Florida or Arkansas. I know I'm throwing in Arkansas there, but I want to see him deliver in a race like this before I really believe it. Since that 23 Whitney, we've seen him run in the Met Mile. We've seen him run in the Whitney. We've seen him run in a number of these big races where we had high expectations and he just didn't deliver. Look, I would love it if he shows that he is just as good as he was last time out, because then we will really have a fun rivalry on our hands as even more horses come into the mix later in the year. I'm just not buying it right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his past performances, and when you start doing this, really good, pretty good, bad, 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 really good, pretty good, good, bad, good, good. It's like, I don't know which version of him is going to show up. And if it's the great version, he can certainly win. But it's what likely to be, I would assume is going to be the second choice. According to the morning line maker, who I trust very much, he'll be that. So,
Well, he won't now with the scratches. Magnitude will probably be the second choice now with less speed in there. But I mean, I was originally going to make them both 3. I just hate making 2 horses the same price. So it's just maybe something I need to get over. But yeah, he'll be, they're going to be 5-2 and 3-1 probably. I'll be interested to see. I mean, so Marcus Hurst did an informal poll of what price he thought. He asked people what price Sovereignty should be. Of course, I mean, there were people who said ridiculous things like 2 or 3-1. 6-5 seems right? He's going to go off less than even money. Yeah,
you can't have the Derby winner running at Churchill on a big race that everyone's paying attention to. That is a big enough race that I think it brings out. It's not the Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont, but it brings out a couple of casual fans. Yeah. Or even just like the weekend warriors. He's going to be bet.
Yeah, I think it's going to bring out more recreational players than we would normally see on a Saturday at Churchill, where handle is already very high, but this will be obviously well in excess of that. So a good look at the Stephen Foster there. Let's cap this pick 6 sequence with the Tepin that goes as race number 12, a horse that we were fortunate to be at the 2015 Breeders' Cup and see win. I didn't bet her that day. I don't really think I ever bet her. In fact, I think the one time I needed her, she ran second to Tourist in the Breeders' Cup Mile, but obviously much love for Tepin and Norman, Mark Cassie, and everybody who was involved there. In this nightcap, Jonathan, I like the 3 East Jabip for Brian Lynch, who's coming back off a dull performance in the Cleopatra at Horseshoe Indianapolis last time out, where she was the beaten favorite with a wide trip the entire way. I think she gets a better trip this time around with Irad getting back on board, but I'm going to use a few horses in here. Where are you headed in the Tepin?
Yeah, I'm going to single A here. I'm going to use the 3 and the 8 as B horses, East Jabib, and the 8 ground support as Bs. I mess around with a lot of little kind of internal fractions and turf races and just kind of help use them in a comprehensive way to help understand a race a little bit better. Because, with paces and stuff like that, it's hard to understand how good a race is. The final time can be a little bit slow if the pace is slow, and it's misleading. Tam Tam's last 3 races, going 7.5, going 8.5, and going 9, are all better than anything Any Hair has run. And I just trust that she's gotten good. And I think Phil Bauer does an outstanding job. I'll single A her in this spot and use those other 2 as B horses.
Yeah, no argument from me. I'm really fascinated to see how they handled Tam Tam early because it seemed like they were incredibly committed last time out to rate her. They did not want her on the lead. I actually thought she ran great on the lead, 2 starts back in the Edgewood, and I'm expecting her to be forward once again. What about ground support? I mean, she's a horse that's coming back off a lengthy break. We've not seen her since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. She does seem like a bad value play.
Yeah, it's just one of those deals where the horse has a lot of works. This is for having the horse obviously has some talent to run like she did in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf, and to show up back here in a spot like this, it just feels like she could be ready. And the other thing too is just off of maturity, looking at the figures that she was running as a 2-year-old. I know there's really no science to it, and I should probably find out what the science of it is, but I think you could assume a 10 to 12 point improvement just on maturity alone. And if she sees that improvement with her figure, she's right there in the mix, even if she's only 90%.
Yeah, this also is not the objective, more than likely. I mean, it's a lengthy back half of the season. There are some grade ones down the line. I'm sure Kelsey Danner would like to have her in. It's fun to have her back. She ran better in the Breeders' Cup than I thought originally as well. So glad to see her back in the mix. But I like East Jabip. Jonathon is on East Jabip and Tam Tam to close out this pick 6 sequence for Saturday afternoon at Churchill Downs. 12 on tap. Get tied on early. Make sure you're playing along at twinspires.com. JK, that's it for us. Enjoyed it, my man, as always.